Should be live any moment. There we go. And we are live with Reason and Theology. And today was my good friend, John Meadows. Brother, how have you been? You need, as everybody here knows, you need no introduction. Bodybuilder extraordinaire, Catholic bodybuilder, and really all around genuinely incredible guy. John, how are you doing, brother?
I'm great. I actually just got back from a leg workout, so it may take a few minutes for the blood to come back to my head. So I may say something crazy. You never know.
Brother, I just barely got done doing biceps. So, I mean, you must feel great, though. I feel great right now. I know you probably feel great. But something that really, I was really worried a few months back when I heard that you had an incident. What exactly happened, brother? Can you tell us what happened there?
Sure. Yeah. So today is July 17th. I see. May 11th, I was doing a light workout, nothing hard. And I got some chest pain. And I thought, and this doesn't feel right. And then I had a kind of a hard time breathing. And I started to think, okay, something bad's happening. And I told the guy I was working out with, I said, man, you just probably should just take me home. And he saw how much pain I was in, and he knows what my pain tolerance is.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. We should probably call the squad. And I started to feel like some numbness in my arm. And I was like, you know what? That's the right call. Let me just humble myself and ask for help. So we called the life squad. They took me to the hospital immediately. They took me into the cath unit. They put the catheter in my arm and my brachial artery and ran it all the way up into your heart. And the doctor said, you have a blood clot. You have your left ascending artery, which is the one that, it's called the widowmaker. It's 100% blocked. And a smaller branch off that artery is also blocked. So he said, this is bad. Like, this is bad.
Yeah.
So they gave me some IV heparin, which is a blood thinner, and it took about a day and a half. I was in a lot of pain for about a day and a half. Then that clot broke, went away, and then the pain kind of, 90% of it went away. And then at some point, I don't really know when, the smaller one must have went away. But so technically I had a heart attack, and they took a lot of tests while I was in the hospital. They basically stuck a camera down the back of my throat. It's called a transesophageal electrocardiogram. And he wanted to take a really close look at my heart, up close and personal. So he did that. And he said, you don't have plaque build up. Your heart's normal size. I don't see cardiomegaly. I don't see like a big enlarged heart. It's normal. Plaque's normal. But for whatever reason, you got a blood clot. And it went to your heart. So now you and I have talked before about the issue I had in 2005 where I had my colon removed, and that was a blood clot in a vein in my colon, which caused blood to build up, and then basically the vein exploded. So, probably I should have been on blood thinners the whole time, but, I lived, I made it. So this is my third chance at life now. So I've recovered very well. I'm training hard again. I took 16 days off out of the gym, and then it took me probably another, I would say 4 weeks to feel normal. And then I'd say the last 2 weeks I felt pretty normal though.
Brother, that is incredible. I got to say, not many people conquer death that way and get another chance. At times, that can be the end of anybody. As you say, they call it the widowmaker. That is quite tough. Now, if you're anything like me, John, and I know you are, you're one of the most hardcore, or if not the most hardcore guy that I know. When you were there in the hospital, and I know this for a fact, you probably had it in your mind. When can I get back to working out? I know you had it in your mind. Is that a mentality that drives you and basically says, you know what, I need to get better. I need to better myself. What was going through your mind when you were there in the hospital?
Well, let me back up a little bit because I think I want to add a little context before I answer that. So
definitely,
when the ambulance arrived and the medics hooked me up to the EKG and they were looking at my heart, I asked him what's going on, and he said, "You're having a heart attack." And I wish I could sit here and tell you that I said, I have faith in God. I'm going to be great. I'm going to pull through. I'm going to be fine. But if I told you that, I'd be lying.
Yeah.
What was going through my head was my kids are going to grow up without a dad.
Yeah.
And it hurt. So that's what was going through my mind.
Of course. Yeah. And I completely understand, brother. It's something that really in the back of my mind, things radically change when you become a father. That's the first thing that's going to go to your mind. For me, first thing that would come to my mind would be my daughter. You want to be there for your children, no matter what. Even if, because I know you, John, I know from dialoguing with and talking with you, brother, your wife is an incredible woman. You want to be there, though. You want to be there as a shepherd, as the caregiver of the family. Even if you know your wife is an incredible person, you want to be there for your children. And I know that must have been very, very hard.
Yeah, it was. And then when I was in the hospital and I got, okay, I think I'm going to be okay now. I felt better. I was like, okay. But honestly, even when I got out of the hospital, I was scared.
Yeah.
When the doctors tell you they don't know why it happened, they can't put their finger on why, then it makes you wonder, well, can it happen again? Can it happen tomorrow?
Oh, yeah.
And I told my wife several mornings when we woke up after I got home, she asked me, what was the first thing you thought? And I said, I lived through the night. I made it another day. I don't know that I should be thinking that. I don't know if that's the right way to think, but just being honest, that's what I was thinking.
Yep.
So it's taken me a little while to get back to where I feel mentally strong. I felt pretty beat down, honestly. And, I've been through this before. I've had a close call before. And as crazy as it sounds, I think I handled it the first time better. The first time it happened in 2005, I woke up in ICU and I was thrilled to be alive. I just couldn't believe I had lived through all the blood loss I had. And I was so happy to have another chance. And this time it hit me harder. It hit me harder. And I think it's because of my family and my kids. And the fact that my kids would be here without me, it just hit me hard. I don't know how else to say it. But I'm feeling a lot better now. I feel much better. I think as long as I'm taking my blood thinners the doctors prescribe for me, I think I should be fine. My blood work is fantastic. Like I said, the heart scan was good. I think literally it's just a matter of something funny about my blood that caused the clot, but I think with the medication I'm on, I'll be fine. So my mindset is coming back now. I'm a little bit ashamed to tell you I haven't been stronger and more positive, but I'd rather just be honest with you and tell you what's been going through my head and that I'm getting better now.
John, when I and I've never ever talked about this on the air before, ever. I've been a theologian, apologist for going close to about 2 decades now. I've never talked about it on the air, but midway into my career of being an apologist, shortly after my brother passed away, I had an intense amount of stress that was on me as well. And, sometimes, there's only so much the mind and the body can deal with. And, I did undergo a lot of stress as well, to the point where it led to a lot of anxiety attacks. And, when the mind gets pushed to that level, I thank the good Lord, I'm nowhere near there anymore. But when you get pushed to that level and you begin to feel fragile, begin to feel weaker, particularly when, as you know, John, for people that are in the bodybuilding field, even for people that are amateur, that don't even compete like myself, but do lift, you know very well that, you bust your butt to build size and to grow. And it's a bit of a mind smasher when you go through issues and you begin losing weight. It'll affect you mentally. You don't feel good about it. And I went through that period, brother, and I can tell you, as somebody who now looking at you, I have incredible strength in Christ, in our Mother Mary and the saints. There was a time period when I went through a very dark period of my life. And I think that darkness is saints have gone through it before in the past. You can read about, periods where St. Paul must have gone through it, being in that dark prison, awaiting him, his death, basically. A lot of the earliest Christians. So I don't think, if anything, I think that it shows you've got an incredible mentality, an incredible spiritual life, because you're able to bounce back from it. With the saying, it's not how you start, it's how you end. So you've got another chance. And it looks to me like you are taking advantage of that. You are living your life to the fullest. You love your children, and really you're living that image. We're made in the image and likeness of God, and you're living as a father and a caregiver for your children, and you're not forsaking or taking anything for granted. And I think that is part of growing as a Christian.
Well, I certainly have a lot of growing and improvement left to make. I feel like I know the last time we talked, I told you, like, I'm still in a very, very early part of my journey. I still feel like I'm on an early part of my journey. I have a lot to learn.
Which is wonderful,
though. I'm just nowhere near where I need to be as a person.
Yeah. And we're living in a tough time right now for you to get to that level real fast. It's a really, crazy period of the world where really we're living in a time where many years back, the conservative values of our ancestors are being turned upside down, where the abnormal is being embraced as a normal. And it's a very odd time for me, John. I'm going to say it's a very, very odd time. It's a tough time to live in, period. And yeah. I think that you're correct when you say you have to try your best to be there for your children. And I hope to God your children are doing well and your wife is doing well. I assume that they are doing well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure they did take it tough when this happened to you, but they're doing well now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. They're doing fantastic. Yep.
Wonderful. Now, let me ask you this, John. Did and I know it's tough at first, because when anything earth-shattering like this occurs to anybody, at times a lot of negativity may run through somebody's mind. Did you ever get to a point where you said, you know what, let me put a little bit more faith in God? And did you feel any consolation? Did that ever occur? Was it a little bit afterwards? Was it during when you were in the hospital? Did you ever kind of break out of that darkness? Because it's normal to be in darkness when something so serious occurs.
I think probably one of the things that made the biggest impact on me was I had a lot of people telling me that God wasn't finished with me and he had a lot more planned for me. Now, I've had people tell me that before, but honestly, it just kind of, I don't know that I really internalized it. But for some reason, I internalized it a little bit more this time. And I thought, you know what, maybe God does have some more planned for me. Maybe there is some more things I need to do. That helped me a lot. It's pretty, I'm pretty blessed, because when I got home out of the hospital, I didn't count them. I don't know. But if I had to guess, I'd say I had 2,000 to 3,000 messages from people that, were praying for me, that were wishing me well. And it was pretty amazing, the amount of support I had in the community. It was real amazing. And we just had a get together at one of our friend's house. She was actually, when I did my RCIA class, she was kind of leading the class with the priest. She was the one that was kind of organizing all that.
Wow.
Wonderful, wonderful lady named Gina. And Gina was moving, and she's moving from here out to Washington. And a lot of the priests were there. And when I showed up with my wife, the priests were all like, "Hey, John, we were praying for you." I'm thinking in my head, I didn't know you knew who I was,
Wow.
So I was like, wow, like these priests were even praying for me, because honestly, I didn't think they even knew who I was, just to be candid with you.
Yeah.
So I know I had a lot of people praying for me, which I appreciated. And so I'm very blessed. I can't help but think people who aren't as fortunate as me, who maybe don't have the support and the friends that I have, So luckily I didn't have to go through it on my own. And you and I both know you never have to go through it on your own.
Agreed.
You never have to do that. But I think some people kind of feel that way sometimes, that they're in this world all by themselves. And that's a tough position to be in, because as you mentioned, the world right now particularly can be overwhelming. So I feel very, very blessed. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you as well.
And what an incredible thing you share there, John. You're right, because I remember when I heard and I saw it via social media. I believe your wife posted that that you had a heart attack, and it took me a while to get through to her. I tried to reach her via your phone, and I know for a fact the reason it took a while was because so many people were worried about you, and that is an incredible thing, brother. That the community responded by really realizing, you know what, we have a gem of a human being here, and they didn't want you to be gone. And the prayers were incredible. I called up friends of mine, a really good friend of mine who's a big fan of your work. I contacted him. You know, we prayed for you instantly, brother. And it's a beautiful thing when you realize that in the Bible, St. Paul calls us the body of Christ, because we're united, the head being Christ. When really the body unites to really pray in charity, in union, and in love with another person, and you realize it then that, hey, maybe I've made a big impact. And I think you've made an incredible impact on the lives of a lot of people, brother.
Well, you know, at some point, it's not just about us, right? We have to impact others, and I try to do that. And I feel like I'm still early in my journey there as well. I still feel like I have a lot to offer, and I feel like, as I mentioned, God has bigger plans for me. And so it's just up to me to take action and to put that into well, just put it in action, right? So yeah. That's the plan.
Amen, brother. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, a little bit of positive stuff to talk about now. Now, let me ask you this, because I legitimately on my mind, brother, how intense are you able to work out? Can you go rather heavy right now, or you kind of have to lay back? You know, how are you lifting right now?
Well, the last 2 weeks I haven't laid back at all.
Incredible.
I'm not as strong as I was, but I'm probably 85% there. And in terms of intensity, I'm not holding back anything now. Now, I worked up to that. I was very careful. So I was very careful. The first week I worked out 3 times, very careful. The second week I worked out 3 times. The third week I worked out 4 times. The fourth week I worked out 4 times. The fifth week I worked out 5 times. So I've been working out 5 times a week now, and I'm not holding back. Like, I'm pushing. And I called Dr. Serrano on Saturday last week, and I said, I just want to double check something with you. I just trained really hard, like really hard. Is that okay? And he was like, yeah, you're fine. Like, you had a blood clot. The blood clot's gone. Your body's normalized. You're fine now. Go for it. I said, okay. I just want to double check. I just want to make sure that was okay. So, yeah, man. I mean, I'm going hard.
And you know, it feels great, doesn't it, to be able to get back to doing what you love to do, you know, lifting. And kind of that kind of does bring me to why I labeled the show today, being fit for the kingdom. Because really, when you are fit, when you take care, when you lift, doesn't that really change your whole mentality and your outlook? You feel great. You feel a hunger for life. You feel an appreciation for life. And, you know, has it affected you in a positive manner, being able to get back, what I would say, John, relatively pretty fast, to being able to lift pretty heavy?
Well, so a couple things there. First of all, I think my comeback to where I am now has been very quick. I think it's happened like really quick.
Yeah.
The cardiologist told me it'd be around 6 months, and it happened in 6 weeks. So, from that perspective, the recovery's been great. But the other thing I wanted to share with you is I had a work ethic that I noticed was very different when I was probably starting at 12 years old. So I was in a lot of sports, And I give you an example. In school, I wouldn't take my study halls. I would get a pass to go to the gym, and I would run around the gym for 42 minutes, or I would go to the little teeny weight room in our school. But I wanted to work hard. And I started to notice, like, there's not a lot of kids like me. Like, they don't really want to work like I do. And that transitioned and stayed that way for up until now. And one of the things that you may find this interesting that always went through my mind was God made me special in this regard. God did something to make me this way. And I think I need to do this to honor him. I know that may sound odd, but I feel like God gave me a very special gift that he doesn't give a lot of people. And that was the ability to push myself. I wasn't doing it to impress anybody else. Okay. I wasn't trying to impress any girls. I wasn't trying to impress any guys. I wasn't bullying people. I just loved to push myself. And I really felt like God must have done this for some reason. And like I said, I need to follow through and honor him. And I always had that in my heart. Like, I didn't wake up one day and go, John, you're going to do this. It was already in me. God built me this way. And so I know that's a little odd, but I've always felt like I had something special. There was a way that I could train and push myself that's not normal. It's not normal at all. I haven't known very many people in my lifetime that were able to do it to the level that I was. And I believe that was God-given.
No doubt. I agree with you completely, John. Not only the level that you can push yourself to, but the desire you have, the passion you have for it. And I can tell you firsthand, by the way, for the audience that are tuning in. By the way, Michael, great seeing you, brother. I'll toss it over to Michael in just a bit. Great seeing you. Glad you're able to join us, Michael. For people that may be wondering, go to John's website. Is it mountaindog.com, John?
Mountaindogdiet.com.
Mountaindogdiet.com.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm plugging that is because if you can do John's workouts, wow, you're going to transform your body. I mean, you're going to transform your body and your life. John, you've got some of the most hardcore stuff in the world. But what I love about your workout plans, brother, is that you curtail them to stuff you've done. You don't do what a lot of other guys do, which just toss stuff out there. You put stuff that you do, that you've done, and it's tough stuff. So you definitely have got a gift, because some of those, I'll tell you right now, those Meadows rolls are a killer, brother.
Well, it's good to see Michael again.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah, good to see you, my friend. So
sorry I'm a little late here. Yeah.
You missed all the good stuff.
Well, I regret that too. I understand that you had a really bad medical experience recently. Did I understand that you actually died?
According to some websites, I died. But wow. I actually didn't die. Wow. But I did have a heart attack. I had a blood clot that blocked my left ascending artery, the Widowmaker, 100%. It was resolved with medicine, thank God.
Okay.
But I'm not going to sit here and tell you it didn't scare me. It scared me a lot. It scared me a lot. But things are good now, and so we're moving forward, and things are good. So
no, that's great news. I'm glad to hear that. Now, maybe let me ask this. Going through something like that, I could only imagine. I imagine that's drawn you closer to Christ. Maybe if you could tell us some ways in which it's drawn you closer to God through this experience.
Yeah, so I'll share with you. I mentioned this earlier, but so when the paramedics showed up, they hooked me up to the EKG, and I looked over at the paramedic and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "You're having a heart attack." And I mentioned earlier in the show that I would love to sit here and tell you that I said, it's okay. God has a plan for me. This is part of his plan. But if I told you that, I'd be lying. That's not what went through my head. What went through my head was my kids are going to grow up without a dad. I was not happy. I was very hurt by that. I thought about it all the way to the hospital. I told the paramedic, man, do everything you can to keep me alive. I don't want my kids to grow up without a dad. I didn't have a dad. I don't want my kids to go through what I went through. So the response that I had was not growing closer to Christ. Initially, it was, this is bad. I don't want my kids to grow up without a dad. That's what I felt in my heart. Now, I was very blessed. I had a lot of people praying for me. I had a couple thousand messages of support. I got home. I was still kind of stinging a little bit. I was honestly afraid that when I went to sleep at night, I wouldn't wake up in the morning. But people kept telling me, you know, God has a plan for you. This is twice now you've almost died, but you're not dying. You know, and people were saying some things that were kind of funny that made me laugh, like, you know, you choked out God, or not God, you choked out death, like, you know, like kind of the Chuck Norris jokes, right? Like, who is death to mess around with you? But anyways, I had a lot of support. And then all those messages where people kept saying God has a plan for you started to kind of break through that down feeling I had. Like, you know what? You're right. God does have a plan for me. I believe that the plan is to touch more people's lives. I believe that's what the plan is. As it unfolds, we'll see. I don't claim to know God's plan. I'm just a little peon out here in Ohio. But I do believe that there is a plan for me to touch other people's lives. There's some things I'm doing now with my life that I haven't shared yet that I think will help make that happen. But that's what went through my head.
Yeah, and so sorry about that. My signal is kind of in and out, so I only got some of that there. So I apologize. Are you able to hear me, by the way, right now?
Oh yeah, I hear you fine.
You're clear. Yeah, totally clear. Might be a little bit of a lag there.
Yeah, it's delayed on my end. Yeah, I'll exit and I'll be back, guys.
Okay.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So John, in the meantime, until Michael comes back, and to me, I find this to be a fascinating question. Is there any advice that you can give to our audience in terms of when it comes to heart health? Is there really any advice that you think could be helpful advice when it comes to having a healthy heart?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The problem is I was doing all this and it still didn't, I still had the issues, but yeah, there's a lot. So about 3 years ago, I think it was, I had a calcium score test done. And what that does is it detects calcification in your arteries, in your heart. So it looks for hard plaques that can cause, you know, when that plaque builds up, you can get your blood supply cut off to your heart. You have a heart attack. You can have congestive heart failure. You can have all kinds of issues with your heart. So that was one proactive measure that I took to see exactly what was going on in my heart. You can get an echocardiogram done. Now, they're pretty expensive, so you want to talk to your insurance about it. But an echocardiogram, that shows the function of your heart. You know, when your heart expands and brings blood in, then it contracts and pushes blood out. You want it to be pushing out a certain amount of blood. That's called ejection fraction. If you have a weak heart and it's not functioning, that test will detect that. It'll tell you. So, you know, you can get blood work done. When blood work can be, you know, you can look at it's called your lipid panel. You can look at your LDL, your HDL, things like that. That can kind of give you an idea, you know, if those things are way off, it might be something you might want to look at in terms of your diet. And the frustrating thing to me is I was doing all those things. You know, I get my blood work done twice a year. I work very closely with a really good doctor. And I had scans done to see if my heart was the right size, if it's normal. And I had a teeny tiny bit of left ventricular hypertrophy, which, as you know, is 100% normal for an athlete. Anybody who trains has a tiny bit of that. I had that. So there's things you can do in terms of testing. Now, in terms of the way you live your life, there's obviously a genetic component. You know, my mom died, my biological mom. She did raise me, but she died at a very young age. She had a heart attack in her 40s, but she also lived a very hard lifestyle. She was a drug addict. She's an alcoholic. So I'm not quick to say it was just genetic. She might have drove that through her actions.
Yep.
My understanding is my biological dad, who I never met, also died real young of a heart attack. Now, I don't know what kind of life he lived, but genetics certainly do play a part in that. My wife's family, everybody lives in their 90s. So she's probably going to live to somewhere in her 90s. Okay.
Incredible.
But if you look at a lot of the research, which I've done my whole life, simply exercising and eating a healthy diet has a massive impact on heart health. And if you look now, statistically, we're getting more, as a society, we're getting more unhealthy every single year.
Oh,
Now, we live longer, but that doesn't mean you're healthier. It means you get medications that keep you alive, but that doesn't mean your quality of life is good. It just means you live longer. Your quality of life is how you feel. You know, how do you feel when you're 50, when you're 60, when you're 70? Do you feel great? Are you still active? That's what I think can be greatly enhanced by your daily activities. Are you exercising? Like even just walking 30 minutes a day provides an incredible health benefit.
Amen, brother.
You know, weight training actually does a tremendous amount of things as well. So you don't get sarcopenia, so you don't lose muscle. Muscle tissue is healthy tissue. You know, as you get older, you don't want to lose all your muscle. It's metabolically active tissue, so it's really good. You know, in terms of your diet, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can eat, and I totally understand when people get confused by all of the theories out there on the internet. Well, do I do a keto diet? Do I do a high carb diet, a low carb diet, a high fat diet, a low fat diet? Do I do the carnivore diet? Blah, 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 blah. Do I do a vegan diet? Do I do endless amount of types of diets that you can do? I would say if you're eating mostly good plant-based foods, carbohydrates, healthy fats, you know, the Mediterranean diet is something that actually has a lot of evidence behind it. They have typically very high HDL levels. You could guess that's maybe from the plant-based diet in addition to the extra virgin olive oil that they have in their diets. You know, those are good things. In terms of meat, I always tell people the quality of the meat is really important. I don't personally even eat a lot of meat. I eat red meat once a week.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not what you would call a vegan by any stretch. But the thing that I wrestle with in my mind is how they treat animals.
Oh, yeah.
I love animals. I love animals. And I typically I try to find, and for years I only ate meat that I knew I was getting from a farmer. There was a farmer here about an hour away from me that he raised red Angus cattle. I knew how he treated his cattle. He was an older farmer who had farmed his whole life, who loved his animals. So I felt better about that. But I'm not going to sit here and,
Incredible.
It's a huge difference between the way an animal is raised there and then being confined in a feedlot where they're all smashed together. They're given a diet that's not natural for their bodies. It's hard for me to get behind that, man.
I'm with you there, brother.
And I'm not like an anti-red meat guy. I think a little healthy grass-fed red meat I think it's good for you. It provides hemi-iron, B12, zinc. There's a lot of good things that it does for you. I like certain kinds of fish. I think wild salmon, you get omega-3s, you know, those things are good for you. I think lean chicken, but with chicken, you know, I try to get truly free-range chicken.
Yep.
I don't mind paying $8 a pound. I don't care. I care about how the animal was treated. Now, a lot of times you just have to see what goes on. Like I get a lot of food from Serrano. So he has his own chickens. He has his own eggs. I have another friend.
That would be your doctor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my doctor. He's an awesome doctor. He's actually a strong Catholic himself. You should have him on here, man. He's a brilliant dude.
Brother, hook it up. We will definitely have him on.
He's a brilliant guy. He's got the biggest hole you can ever imagine. He's world renowned. He does seminars all over the world. But anyways, getting back to my point, you know, mostly plant-based foods with some good, healthy, raised, well-fed animals, I think is okay. I think that's a good thing. And like if you look at my blood work is very good. You know, my insulin levels, my hemoglobin A1C, I could go on about all that stuff. I don't want to bore your audience, but you know.
I think the audience would love to hear it, John. And you're bringing up a really good point, because if we look, particularly we know that Christ partook of bread, probably incredible bread, had figs, has nuts, had fish. But we also read Paul. If you look at 1 Corinthians 10:25, he says, eat whatever is sold in the meat market, but I imagine the meat market back then would have been quite different than the meat
Way
market
different.
today.
Yeah, way different.
You didn't have them getting pumped full of hormones or getting, totally different. And I think that does get, in my opinion, brother, to the heart of the issue, in that be careful where you get your meat from, because you're putting that into your body. And if you're going to get it from a company that has a little label, little asterisk that says, well, hormones have not been truly shown to cause any issues, you don't know what they're pumping into them. So you do go from what I can hear, from what you're telling me, you go you put in an extra effort to be careful what you put into your body. And I think that really is key, because if we're putting junk into our body, we're not going to feel good in our everyday life, are we?
Well, I've got this rule. I call it the 90-10 rule. 90% of the food you eat should be very healthy. And then 10%, hey, have some fun. Go out and have some ice cream with the kids. If it's somebody's birthday, have a piece of birthday cake with them. But if that turns into a 10% healthy and a 90%, then you got a problem, right? And, I can tell you, like, when my diet's dialed in, I feel really good. But when my diet's not dialed in, I'm eating a lot of very poor choice foods. I don't feel good. I feel tired. I feel sluggish.
Lethargic.
I feel like I got like a fog over me. I don't feel sharp at all. So it definitely impacts, and not only how you feel, it impacts the quality of your life, because what happens is you get sick. I mean, you get blood sugar problems, for example. And when you get, say, type 2 diabetes, for example, that is at the root of almost every degenerative disease out there. Like, if you look up what is at the root of all these degenerative diseases, a lot of it is tied back to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, look, it's an issue that you're born with. You can't do anything about it. But type 2 diabetes is lifestyle driven. It's the choices you make.
Yep.
So if you're going to UDF and you're drinking a 60-ounce big gulp with 100 grams of sugar every day, and then you're drinking 6 Mountain Dews, like, you're going to have some problems.
Yeah, no doubt. And that, I can't imagine how the body would react. You'd feel terrible putting all of that into your body. But that does bring me to another question, John. I don't know if you ever touched upon it on your YouTube page. By the way, everybody, look up John Meadows' YouTube. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, you've got the best lifting, bodybuilding YouTube page there is. I mean, you share an incredible wealth of information there that really any other person would probably charge for the amount of stuff, the incredible information you share, brother. I recommend everybody go there. I don't know if you've ever touched upon it, but here's a good one, John. What would your advice be? Completely no alcohol at all, or the occasional whiskey, wine, or beer? Do you ever touch alcohol at all?
I've had 2 beers in 2 years, and both times it was with my priest.
Wow, incredible.
But I do have an occasional, flavored vodka with like a Diet 7-Up. So I'll have maybe one of those every, say, 4 months, maybe. So I have maybe 3 or 4 of those a year. I don't see any issue with that. Like, if you, I know, like, if you want to have a glass of wine at night, I don't have any issues with that. Now, if somebody wants to have a bottle of wine or a 12-pack of beer, like, okay, now this conversation is changing. But, I don't see that as an issue. I think it's more of an issue if you go to McDonald's and you get a Big Mac. That's more of an issue than having a drink every week or 2 weeks. But that's what I do, just a little teeny bit every now and then, maybe when I'm at a social gathering. But that's pretty much it.
And you sound a lot like me, John, in the sense that I won't touch that alcohol unless I've had an incredible week of working out. Yeah. So if I don't feel like I've really given it my 200 to 300%, I'm not going to touch it. If I felt like I've had an incredible week, hey, you never know when it's your last day, your last hour on earth. I'm going to enjoy, a casual drink here or there, but never in excess. If you sit down with a 12-pack, well, I mean, then you've probably got other problems that you really should assess. I really don't recommend that either. But the occasional, you're right, the occasional contrary to what a lot of people think, your gains aren't going to disappear, are they?
No, it's like drinking beer is not. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's good for you, but
Right.
but the amount of damage it would do, like, come on, it's not going to do anything. You know, if you drink a lot of it, now you got an issue. Again, it goes back to just being smart about it. And obviously wine. I mean, we've all heard about resveratrol and how it's a healthy antioxidant, phytonutrient filled drink. I actually tried to get myself to drink a little glass of wine every night. I actually tried to make myself for the health benefits.
Wow.
But I just didn't like the taste.
I'm with you there.
You know,
Yep.
I actually for the health benefits, I tried to make myself like it. I just couldn't handle the taste.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a big, I'm not big in wine either. And you know, it's tough that when you really don't like the taste of it that much, you know, you're not going to be able to keep doing it in a consistent manner, which is very similar to bodybuilding, isn't that, John? Because if you truly love it and it truly becomes part of your life, you're going to find a way to try to be healthy and try to lift.
Yeah. I don't wake up and go, am I going to lift today? Like, it's a part of my life. It always has been. There is zero decision-making process. You know, there might be times where, like today, for example, I just trained this afternoon because I had some people flying in from out of state to train with me. But normally it's part of my life. I get up, I eat breakfast, I do some work, then I go to the gym. Like, it's not waking up and going, do I want to work out today? It's just part of my life. It's just like, you know, just part of who I am. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I do want to, before I ask you one more question, and before we get to the audience questions, I want to ask you one thing. Maybe a bit of a controversial question, because maybe you'll say, hey, you put him in the spot. What is your favorite workout of all time, John?
My favorite workout?
If you could pinpoint it to one, are you able to do that? Can you pinpoint it to one, to where you say, you know what, I'm going to have a bit of a rough week, but I have one day where I'm completely free and I want to get this one particular workout in? Do you have a favorite workout?
Well, I will tell you, man, I always loved squats. I loved them. If you know my history, you know I was up to almost an 800-pound squat at one point in my life.
Oh, yeah.
I can't do it now. I can't handle the load on my spine now. But if I could somehow magically be 25 years old again,
yeah,
I can't even begin it. Squatting was like, you know, Tom Platz always he always used to use this analogy. He used to always say the squat rack was his altar.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was trying to be sacrilegious. I think he was just trying to communicate how much he really liked to squat.
Yep.
And that always made sense to me. On Fridays, getting ready for my big Saturday squat workout, I just felt this like passion. Like, I can't wait to get in there and squat. And Saturday morning, I would wake up and I would be so excited.
Yep.
I would go in there and I have my big squat workout. I would get done, I would eat, and then immediately I'd start thinking, I can't wait till next Saturday. Like, the squat workouts to me were transcendent. They were like, it was the thing I did that it's like I was on another planet, another wavelength. I just loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a really good point there, John, an incredible point, because as you get older, doing workouts that really cause undue pressure and pain in the spine might not be very wise. And you bring up a point that, for me, John, I've had to, as I've grown older, vary up my workouts a bit, because you bring up a really good point. It's about the quality of life. Later on in life, it's about the quality, and not so much lifting an incredible amount. At the end of the day, if you're going to cripple yourself, what good is it going to do? And I've had to vary it up as well. One of my favorite workouts, I mean, it still is to this day, probably my favorite, would be bent over barbell rows. But I think it was a bit irresponsible and maybe a bit crazy. In the past, I would do, you know what I say when I say GBT, German volume training. I would do an insane amount of weight, just pure barbell, bent over barbell rows.
Yeah.
Well, that, as you get older, that is not very wise to do.
10 sets of 10, right?
Oh man, 10 sets of 10. Or I eventually got to the point of I was doing you're gonna say you're insane. I was doing 20 sets of 20. And even though I was able to get to the workout in excruciating pain, imagine the way I felt the following day.
Oh yeah.
And I remember doing it one time and saying, hey, wow, I got through it. I feel great. Well, I felt virtually almost crippled for about 2 weeks after that.
Yep.
So it really, you bring up a good point for the audience, John. It's about quality of life and doing things that break you down for really no good reason other than maybe, to feel good ego-wise.
It's just ego. Yeah. It's just straight ego.
In the long run. Yeah. They won't be good in the long run.
It was hard for me to give up squats. I loved them. I loved them. But in 2013/14, I could tell, man, I don't like the effect this is having on my spine. I would wake up the next day and I would sit on the end of the bed for 10 minutes before I would stand up. Yeah. Like, oh man, my back hurts. Or then I got to the point where just putting the bar on my back, I could feel like electric shocks going down my spine. I'm like, that's not good. So I kicked ego aside and I said, I'm not going to be able to squat with a bar on my back again. And I didn't. I haven't done it since. And man, I gave up my favorite exercise, but I don't want to be crippled. I got my kids. I want to play with my kids. I want to feel good. I want to have quality of life.
Do you do bent over rows at all?
I did them probably differently than you did them. I did them in the Smith machine.
Smart. Very smart.
So I could keep in my groove. I could do slower reps. I could set my torso up a little bit higher so there wasn't quite as much stress on my lower lumbar. Now, I don't do them now, but that's the way that I like to do them.
Yeah. And I totally get that. And I will have to agree with you that I've had people tell me, well, you know what? And I guess my mentality probably would have been the same about 10 years ago. People saying, are you kidding me? Smith machine rows? But really, they can be quite great because if you think about it, John, because I've done them as well. If you think about it, you can put an incredible emphasis on your back and get an incredible stretch that you might be lacking a little bit of that stretch when you do it outside of the Smith machine. And all around it, in my opinion, it's safer.
Definitely safer, for sure. And like I said, I like the fact that you can kind of lock into a position and just focus on contracting your back. Like you can really focus on contracting your back. And yeah, I'm a big fan of those. Those were a very good movement for me.
Yeah, I love them. They are definitely a staple for me. Now, I see we get into some audience questions. Let me ask you one last thing before we get to them. Really, it's always fascinating me. And I briefly brought it up the last time you were on. But we talk about a carpenter. We talk about a fisherman. And when I talk about a carpenter, clearly talking about Christ. Fishermen would have been the great St. Peter and probably a few other apostles. Those are active people in everyday life. Would the food that they ate, John, as we talked about earlier, they would have had fish, bread, figs, nuts. You got to imagine, not only spiritually strong, but you got to imagine that perhaps Christ and the early Christians are probably physically strong as well.
I would think so. I mean, like if you said, let's talk about a good diet, what would it be? Good, clean protein like fish. Nuts are certainly a great food, depending what kind of nut it is. You could get monounsaturated fat. You could get essential fats. You could, depending on what it was, you can get a lot of different things. You can get selenium from some. You can get iron from some. There's a lot of benefits there. The bread was made different then. The process was a little different. So figs, real high in potassium. Like, oh yeah, I could see that being very effective.
Yeah, no doubt, brother. Let me get to a few audience questions. So we've got Samuel. John, are supplements essential for being healthy? What are the best ones that you could possibly recommend?
Well, generally speaking, I don't want to say they're essential for being healthy. I would rather you eat a good, complete diet, but there are a couple things that the way we eat now aren't normally covered, like vitamin D is one of them. Most people don't have really good vitamin D levels. The only way you'll know that is if you go get some blood work done. It's called a 25-OHD test. So a lot of people need to take some supplemental vitamin D. D3 would be the form you want. Most people, unless you eat a lot of sardines and mackerel, which I don't know anybody that does, you probably don't have really good vitamin D levels. Now, the other thing is you can get it from the sun, but depending on where you live, unless you live in a tropical climate, there's a lot of time during the year you're not going to have a lot of sun exposure. You're going to have a winter and a fall. The other thing I would say is a lot of people don't eat like salmon, for example, which is loaded with essential fatty acids.
Oh, yeah.
Essential fatty acids, omega-3s and omega-6s, cannot be created by your body. You need to take them from a food source. So if you don't really eat them, you don't. Now, a lot of people say, well, I just eat flaxseed or something like that. Those are kind of the raw materials to end up being DHA, but that process gets worse and worse and worse as you get older. So you may need a fish oil supplement. Now, I'm really careful in recommending fish oil supplements because it has to be manufactured in a very pure way, and then it has to be bottled in a very pure way. Long chain fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6 are very sensitive to light, to heat. So you want to keep them cool. You want to keep them in a dark bottle. So you got to be very careful, or you end up putting something bad in your body because, like, for example, if you let it get heated up or in light, the fats can oxidize.
Oh, wow.
And so that's like pouring rust into your body. That's not a good thing. Now, so if you can find good fish oils, like a fish oil is good, vitamin D is good. If you have a hard time meeting your protein needs, then something like protein powder can be effective. There's a wide range of quality on protein powders. That's one of the things that we make. We make a protein powder that's a blend, and ours is very, very different. We use digestive enzymes in it. I use protease, so it digests really, really well.
Wow.
I mix whey, which is very high in branched chain amino acids, with casein, which is a little slower acting, so it sticks with you. You have prolonged amino acids in your body. So a protein powder can be beneficial if you don't like to eat large amounts of protein at one sitting. So it can help if you're not eating.
And your company is called Granite Supplements, right?
Yes, sir. Granite
Great.
Supplements.
Incredible. Yeah, I'm putting the banner there so people can go to that. So if you don't mind me asking, do you have a particular name for that protein of yours?
It's just called Granite Protein.
Okay.
It's it's not a cheap protein. It's not something you're going to find in Walmart or.
Well, cheap protein is just that. It's cheap. Good stuff is going to cost you money.
Yeah, and that one is made to be top of the line. I could get into how we make it and all that, but I'd probably put your audience to sleep. But
if you could briefly touch upon that, I'm sure that people listening now and later on, because we have a lot of people that tune in later at night as well, I'm sure they'd love to hear that.
Okay, well,
yeah.
So it's a blend, first of all, and there's a reason why I made it this way. So there's a blend of, let's start with the whey proteins. There's whey concentrate and whey isolate. So whey concentrate and whey isolate are not two different kinds of proteins. There's not a whey isolate cow and a whey concentrate cow. It's from the same source. But a lot of people will say, well, whey concentrate is the cheap protein. It can be if it's adulterated, I'm going to say. But whey concentrate is less processed. Now, it's all processed, okay?
Yeah.
But it's less processed. So you have these subfractions in whey concentrate that are good for your immune system, okay? Those stay intact in whey concentrate. Whey isolate has some of the lactose and some of the fat filtered out. Now, it's a very small amount of fat, and it's a very small amount of lactose, but it's a little more pure. So percentage-wise, you get a little bit more protein, but it has to be processed additionally to do that. So it kills those subfractions. Both of those proteins are excellent proteins if they're coming from a good source. So what happens with some protein powders, let's say like in mine, I have 23 grams of protein in one scoop. So I say 23 grams of protein based on the amount of amino acids that's in it. Now, I have a very good amino acid profile. So for instance, the BCAAs, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Those are branched chain amino acids. Those are very good for your immune system. They're very good for muscle recovery. You need to have adequate amounts of those. So what happens is a lot of people make protein powder and they take the cheap aminos, like they may take glycine, which is a very cheap. It's not a bad protein. It's just cheap.
Very.
And they'll like megadose that, and so they might say, well, I got 23 grams of aminos in mine too, but it's not the right profile. It doesn't have the leucine that turns on muscle protein synthesis. So they can monkey around with the formula, and you never know it. You just see, oh, there's 23 grams of protein in that.
Yeah, and
But
John,
it's made in a very cheap way.
John, what a good point, because, and I apologize for interrupting you, but you're making a great point, because you go to Walmart, and I don't want to mention the name on the air, but you go to Walmart and you can find certain proteins that not only will they'll mislead you, because it'll say 50 grams, 2 giant scoops. First off, the scooper's going to be massive. Second off, people have done studies to show that it doesn't even amount to 25 grams of solid protein there. You're paying a cheap amount, but you're getting junk. Essentially, you're getting junk.
Protein is very expensive, good protein. There's only a few manufacturers in the world. And I know how much protein costs, and it's not cheap. And when I see people selling it for less than what I know it costs,
red flag.
Red flags. Okay, they're doing something that's not right. And it's a food. You can't just negotiate down to where it's real cheap.
Why isn't more being done though to stop? I mean, how can it be legal, John? Because I see it often. How can they get away with it?
More people get caught now. That situation I was describing, where you spike some of the cheaper amino acids, it's called protein spiking, and they have caught several companies doing that, and they get in a lot of trouble. But then they pay a fine, and they just go back about their business. It's the FDA does a lot of inspecting. They do their best. It's hard for them to keep up with all these companies, though. These companies just pop up right and left in the supplement industry.
Or they'll come up with another name.
The manufacturers do the same thing. The manufacturers, sometimes the supplement companies have no idea. They sign with a manufacturer, and then the manufacturer does stuff behind their back. So the supplement company may not even know it. They may think, yeah, I got a great protein. But the manufacturer's like, well, they can't see what I'm doing, so I'm going to monkey around and make the formula cheaper so I can make more money. That happens more than I would like for it to happen in our industry. And then when that manufacturer gets in trouble, they disappear and they come back under another name.
And really, John, it's real dishonesty. And that is why I do recommend people go. We put the link to your website. I'm looking at it, and I can tell people from somebody who's been lifting for a long time, you got the real deal here, John. You got whey, you got casein, you got whey isolate, and you have beef, grass-fed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I put a little beef protein in it, because now beef is actually the cheapest protein, but beef has a couple amino acids in it that help your joints. Proline is one of them, for example. So I did I wanted something in there for your joints, so I put a little bit of beef protein in there to help your joints. I also put a little egg white protein in there. Egg white, honestly, I bet you can relate to this. It's just because we're old school. You remember how we used to have the egg white proteins? Just because we're old school.
Oh, I remember.
They didn't always taste good.
No.
But then the whey and casein, so that's a very rare blend. That's an extremely rare blend. But I'm very proud of it. It's
I would argue that you have an elite blend there.
It is for sure. And the other thing that I really like about it is, so 3 things. Number one, it tastes amazing. And it took us 6 months to get it to taste as good as it does. Number 2, we, one of the things that bothers people about protein is it upsets your stomach. And a lot of times it's because they shove a bunch of sugar in it to flavor it, or it's processed too much. And mine has never upset anybody's stomach. I haven't had one customer say my stomach is upset. And I think that's really good for protein powder. That's rare.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, what was the third thing I was going to say? Oh, and it mixes easy. So a lot of people like to carry a blender around with you. I mean, I guess you could, but I wanted to make a protein that you could just shake in a shaker and just blend it.
Yeah.
But the thing is also sometimes when you drink a protein drink, Typically, when it's just whey isolate, you drink it, and then half hour later, you're hungry again.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't fill you, and that's why I put the casein in it to slow down and to thicken it up a little bit so it sticks with you.
Slow digestion. That's incredible.
Yeah. So that was the thought process that I went through when I made that protein.
And I've got to say, for the people, typically casein alone is quite expensive. You've got an incredible blend of all of this stuff here. It looks great. And you tell me, you taste tested it yourself. I imagine it probably tastes really good. It looks good to me. The bag looks really good, John.
Oh, it's amazing. The salted caramel is addicting, man.
Are you by any chance coming out with any new flavors?
No, but we're going to vegan protein right now. That's going to be our next one.
Wow. Okay, vegan protein. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Definitely keep an eye out for that. And later on in the future, we'll definitely have you on again. You can talk about it. And, who knows if you have new flavors out. I want to get to Hercule wants to know, John, now that you are coming through the health issues, have you thought about how long you can keep doing heavy lifting?
That's a great question. I have thought about it, and it's not a matter of whether I'm going to train or not. I'm going to train because it's actually good for your body. I think your question revolves more around the intensity and heavy weights. And I will tell you that I can't do the things now that I could do like when I was 30, 35. I can't go that crazy, but I know that. I know it's not a good thing for me. It's like you were saying when you were doing the 10 sets of 10, you'd wake up crippled.
Oh, yeah.
That's what would happen to me if I tried to train the way I did when I was 30 and 35. But I can still train really hard, and I enjoy it, and I believe it's good for me. So I don't have any intentions on stopping ever, but I do plan on being smart and not overdoing it and knowing what my limits are and kind of playing by the rules, right? Like I know I'm capable of certain things, and if I do something silly, I'm going to hurt myself. So there is, what's it called? Know thyself. So, I believe that I have to be self-aware and know thyself and just be smart.
No doubt. No, I would add that, Hercule, to pretty much almost any workout. If you are doing a workout that is essentially crippling you, you can work around it. I mean, as you know, John, there's so many different variants of every kind of workout to hit every angle of the body. If you're worried about your back and you don't want to be doing squats, there are other workouts that you can do. But in terms of being intense and continuing, I'm with you there, John. My desire is to continue doing this until the end of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what happens with a lot of people when their quality of life goes down is they lose strength, they lose their muscle, they get, like I said, sarcopenia, and then physically they break down, and that's not what I want to happen. I don't want to break down physically. I want to ride this thing out.
I'm totally with you, brother, 100%. We have AJ. Is starting strength a good routine for a complete beginner? I don't know what that is.
I'm assuming by saying starting strength, you're talking about what's his name, Mark.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, he's oh my God, what's his name, Mark?
Mark Lobliner?
No, Mark's actually a friend of mine too, though.
Okay.
Mark Ripito. I assume you're talking about Mark Ripito starting strength. That is good for a beginner, and so is 5-3-1 by a guy named Jim Wendler. Both of those two are great places to start.
Great. Okay. I don't know. Well, what is that, John? If you don't mind me picking your brain on that, is that a kind of a beginner routine?
Starting strength is he covers the fundamentals, like how he thinks you should deadlift, squat. It's not like bodybuilding. It's more of he picks basic compound movements and teaches you those. And Jim Wendler has his is called 5-3-1. And it's similar. It's kind of a minimalist training. It's not using a bazillion exercises, but getting really good at a select few exercises. And I'm a big fan of Jim personally. So I like his 5-3-1 method. It's very effective. It's actually good for beginners and advanced people.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
So it's that's a really good one I can recommend.
Incredible. We have Samuel Roberts, another one. As we get older, if a doctor prescribes test, is that okay?
So if you get tested and your test levels and free test levels are below normal,
Yep.
you are actually at risk for a heart attack, depression, diabetes.
Terrible stuff.
There are a ton of issues with low testosterone. And just to be completely straightforward with you guys, I take 100 milligrams a week. An HRT dose, hormone replacement therapy, is usually 150 to 200 milligrams a week. I take 100. I can tell you that when I stop it, my test levels kind of go, I don't want to say zero, but I feel terrible. I just feel horrible.
And you shouldn't stop it. Yeah.
It's bad. Yeah. And Dr. Serrano told me, like, when I had my heart attack, he said, make sure you don't stop that. But anyway, so if you have the medical need, it's actually bad for you if you don't get your levels normalized. So I would highly encourage you to get your overall test levels checked, your free test levels. Both of those should be in range. If they're not in range, you need to get them in range. And if they're not in range, you will feel a million times better when they're in range and you're normal. Like we talked about quality of life. If you want a low quality of life, go through life with a really low test level. That will explain you very quickly what a low quality of life is. So I would encourage you to keep those levels normalized.
Yeah, it can affect pretty much everything. And I've told people, if you ever get that a test and a doctor would ever prescribe that for you, there's nothing wrong with wanting to live a better quality of life, with wanting to feel better. Really, you open up the door to a lot of darkness, and really spiritual darkness, when you allow depression and things like that to seep in. And as we get older, as men get older, we want to have our test levels at a good level, because particularly, we get older, we should want to feel as good as we possibly can.
Absolutely. And Dr. Serrano has sent me, oh my gosh, maybe 30, 40 studies on why you should keep your test levels normal and in range.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely something you got to keep an eye on.
Definitely. We'll think about two more. We've got Hercule. This is a good one. John, your thoughts on intermittent fasting and lifting?
Well, I mean, I think intermittent fasting can be done. I think if you're thinking about, like, for example, losing weight, it really comes down to more being in a caloric deficit. So more of burning more calories than you're taking in. If it takes you to do intermittent fasting to achieve that, more power to you. I think it's great. If you want to eat 6 times a day, you can still lose weight as long as you're expending more calories than you're taking in. It's whatever fits your lifestyle. Now, in terms of lifting, can you do intermittent fasting and lift? Absolutely. But I will say this. If you're training really, really hard, I would advise most people do better with a little fuel in them. So if you wake up in the morning and you had a big dinner, you're probably okay. But if you don't eat all morning and then you go into the gym in the afternoon and you haven't eaten all day, it's going to be really hard for you to have the best workout you can. You would want to have some fuel in you. So I would experiment. I would try training with fasting and then try training with some food. See if you feel better. I do coach some people who fast. Well, I wouldn't even really say they fast. They just get up and train without eating. But as long as you had a good dinner,
Yep.
You're good. Anybody that I have coached that has waited until 12 or 2 o'clock to train and without eating, the results have not been good. They could train hard for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and then, there's no energy in them. So you don't need a ton of food. You don't need to go to a buffet and eat a steak and potato, but I do think it's wise to have some food in you for fuel.
No doubt. And I can tell you firsthand, as somebody who has ignorantly done that when I've had a jam-packed schedule, going to bed and waking up and not eating anything and not working out till around 2, you're not going to have an optimal workout.
No,
you're not. If you think you're going to go and you're going to, you're going to max your bench, you're going to lift, you're going to get a PR, or you're going to go crazy. Well, you might for a few minutes, but then you're going to feel like you're dragging and like you need to get out of there. Like you need to get out of there and get food in your body. And that really, when you're at the gym, that is not a feeling that you want to have. You don't want to feel like you want to run out of there.
No.
No, not at all. Let's take one more, John, before we wrap it up, brother. Does John have any thoughts on the carnivore diet for general health and strength?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a hot diet right now. Everybody's talking about it. I tend to cringe when I think about any diet that completely eliminates a macronutrient. So if someone says to me, I'm doing this great diet, I eat no fat, I worry about that because you do need some fat. You need it hormonally. You need it for your joints. You need omega-3 and omega-6 to live. If someone says, I don't eat any carbs at all, I worry about that. There can be downstream impacts on your thyroid levels, for instance. So I'm a little nervous about getting fully behind something that eliminates a macronutrient. Now, I will say this. Sometimes those diets are good for certain periods of your life. Like, let's say, for example, you're insulin resistant and you're fasting insulin, your hemoglobin A1C, they're getting a little out of control. So you want to lower your carbohydrates and you think you can do that with a carnivore diet. Fantastic. That's great. So I do see short-term reasons why you should do certain diets. I just hesitate in saying it's a good long-term solution to just eliminate a macronutrient. That just doesn't sound doable long-term. Short-term, I can understand, but long-term, it's going to be hard to pull off.
Yeah, long-term, it would be quite difficult to pull off, no doubt. I mean, as you get older and older, you're going to completely cut out something. And I've tried in the past. I've dabbled on that whole carnivore thing. I've got to tell you, John, it's tough. It's tough to shove steak down your throat all day long. You know, I don't know if I'd be able to do that.
You know, it's funny. I was just coming from the gym talking to a guy about it, and he said, yeah, I got this buddy. He eats so much meat, his jaws are hurting. And I said, no, there's another level to that. Then what happens is your teeth start to hurt from chewing so much.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember when I had really high levels of meat in my diet, you know, maybe like 10 years ago, I remember my temple and my jaws would start to hurt, and then my teeth would start to hurt literally from eating so much meat. You're just like, oh my gosh, how in the world do people eat so much meat, man?
And it's painful. Having the pain here in the jaw region, it is quite painful, John. I'm totally there with you. So any kind of diet, in my opinion, that goes to one extreme, you know, they're a bit of a fad kind of a diet, and you know, they're not recommended long term.
Yeah. I think a good balanced macronutrient profile that's within your caloric range is always going to be your best bet.
Definitely, brother. It has been a pleasure having you on again. I put your website. Everybody, go to mountaindogdiet.com and go to granitesupplements.com. John, before we end the show, do you have any advice that you want to share with the audience? Anything you want to plug, a workout, if you want to plug a supplement, anything at all, brother? The floor is yours.
Oh, just, you know, check out my YouTube. My YouTube is Mountain Dog 1. Same thing as my Instagram handle, Mountain Dog 1. That's about it. I appreciate you having me on, and let me know when you want to talk again. I always enjoy these talks, and I've been thinking about it all day. I've been excited. So I had to wrap up my workout and get home because I was excited to talk to you. So I appreciate the love and support as always.
Brother, we will definitely, without a doubt, have you back on. Michael told me to tell you he looks forward to having you back on. He had a bit of a technical hiccup there, but the next time we have you on, Michael will definitely be on. And brother, I think I speak for everybody when I say that I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be praying for your family. And brother, God bless you. You have yourself a fantastic evening, and we will be in touch.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.